Hello world, Dano here, stacking paper as always, and I've just completed, just today, More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon. This is going to be my brief little review of it. I guess I'll give a little bit of background to Sturgeon because I have read some of his work before. Two short stories, Microcosmic God and If All Men Were Brothers, Would You Let One Marry Your Sister? Which is a crazy title for a story, but it does make sense when you read it. And both of those stories are incredible. I actually think short fiction, in terms of science fiction, is like some of the best works of science fiction are short stories. Mainly because prior to like the 1960s, there weren't a lot of like novels being published in science fiction because the publishing companies just like didn't believe in it. They didn't really think it had like enough pull to sell copies before guys like Clarke and Asimov like proved that it could. Like for example, this novel More Than Human is a fix-up novel, which for the majority of people who don't read older science fiction or won't really know what I mean by fix-up novel, what that basically means is a fix-up novel is a story that's built around a short story. So an author writes a short story that's really good. In this case, the short story is called Baby is 3, which is the middle story of More Than Human. More Than Human is 3 stories. And so he releases Baby is 3. It has a claim, and so a publishing company says, okay, we'll print this. You gotta pad it out. Essentially, you have to add other stories to it and then mesh them together. Hence a fix-up novel, because you're making an extra long story out of a shorter story by connecting other stories to it. So that's why I kind of give it a little more leeway than I would like a regular novel, because I did really enjoy it. I thought it was a little slow, and because there isn't much action, but that's okay because I don't need there to be a lot of action as long as there's good dialogue and good themes, which this definitely has. It just, for such a short novel, it did take me like this. It's less than 200 pages. Like I should have crushed this in a couple days, but it took me like a week and a half, mostly because I've been very busy. But still, like I definitely would have read other books this length faster, but what is here is really solid. Essentially, the short elevator pitch of this is a story about a bunch of people, a lot of them young people, like kids and a couple adults, who some of them have like superpowers, essentially, like telekinesis, telepathy, teleportation, and some even have like mental disabilities and powers, sometimes a little bit of both. And it's about these people being gravitated towards one another and kind of becoming a bit of a hive mind and forming a new form of humanity, which by the end of the book they called Homo Gestalt. And it is really beautiful. There's like Sturgeon is a really poetic writer for someone who's writing. The settings can be very dry, but like the emotions are super real. So it's comprises of 3 stories. There's The Fabulous Idiot, Baby is 3, and Morality. Those are the 3 short stories. And it kind of just paths the life cycle of this group of people as they grow from children in some cases to adulthood / some members die, spoiler alert, and kind of start getting replaced. And it's just like showing how people with these extraordinary abilities learn to rely on one another and have this like sense of communion. There's a mechanic in the book called bleshing, where essentially when these characters get together, they close their eyes and they just become one, and they feel the oneness of humanity. But it's really a story about finding your humanity through a group of people who are more than human, wink wink nudge nudge, but that's really what it is. And there's some boundary pushing here too. Like this book was written in 1953. It's extremely progressive because the main characters, so there's a character called Lone. He's kind of like the gravitating force of the group. He's the one who pulls everyone together. Everyone kind of gets drawn to him. And then there's like kids that run from home, and 2 of these kids are twins who can teleport, and they're 2 little black girls. And this is in 1953. This is pre like full integration in school systems. Like this book was written like 4 years before the Little Rock Nine. Like this is way ahead. And there's a scene in the book where they find a house together, and they're finally, like, after they literally are slugging it in the woods for a large majority of the first story. And then into the second story, they finally like have a home that they can all live in. But Bonnie and Beanie, who are the 2 girls, they're separated from the rest of the group, and they hang out with the maid of the house, who is also black. And they eat separately from the rest of the group. And there's a scene where the main guy of this story, who's the leader of this group now, is saying, like, why aren't we all eating together? And she's like, oh, like, the lady of the house is like, well, no, we don't do that. Like, there are certain ways that things are done. And they're like, well, you know, our previous leader, he wanted us to be together. Like, he wanted us to live together. And they're like, you are living together. You're all into the same house. And he's like, that's bullshit. Like, why can't we see them? This is ridiculous. And then he calls out to them, and they immediately teleport to him. And it's like this fun moment, because the lady of the house starts losing her mind, and we're like, oh no, this can't be happening. And it's just like, he said, we're meant to be together. You don't really get to tell us what to do. And this is in 1953. Like, crazy progressive, like, for the time. So I'm honestly surprised, like, it even got published in that sense. Like, it's really, really ahead of its time in that time. But yeah, the whole book, it's so hard for me to even like explain what it's about, because it's so cerebral. A lot of this just takes place in the minds of these characters, and it's really about them just trying to process who they are and how they're gonna continue to live together in a world that just fundamentally doesn't understand them. And for like a I wouldn't even say hard sci-fi. This is definitely soft science fiction, but it's just really, really emotional for a book of this like length. And it was so surprising. I'm almost like, I was going to give it a 7.5 out of 10, but like the more I think about it, the more I like it. And I feel like I kind of drifted a little bit while I was reading. I wasn't really as locked in as I should have been. But the more I think about it, like, the more I really do appreciate what he's accomplished with this. And I'm going to give it a solid 8. I think this is actually an 8 out of 10. It's got some issues with pacing and, like, general cohesion, but the emotional beats and, like, what it says about, you know, finding your humanity when you don't even know how human you really are. Really moving stuff. Definitely a recommend. I would probably I think I enjoy Microcosmic God more than this, because it's more up my alley. I would probably recommend that first, but if you're looking for a novel, this is definitely the one to go with. On to my next book, though. This is the one, I gotta say, as much as I liked More Than Human, I'm way more excited for this book. So the next book I'm reading is Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. This was made into a really famous film called Stalker, and I guess video games too. Yeah, it was also like which was then made into a video game. I haven't watched the film. I'm going to after I read this, but I've only heard good things. Every single booktuber that I follow that is super, neck deep into science fiction, they all give Roadside Picnic like glowing reviews. It's like the peak of Soviet science fiction. So super excited. I can anticipate myself absolutely blasting through this one. So expect another video as soon as possible. But until then, signing off. Take it easy.